morning. It's 9:15. We're going to get started. And for those of you online, good morning. It is August 27th, 2023. I am Paul Day, and you are watching and here in class at Unity of Springfield in Springfield, Missouri. And it's so great to have all of you here. It's good to be here. I hope everybody survived this past week. It was one heck of a heat wave, I guess. I don't know if I've experienced that much intensity for a long time anyway. It's good to be kind of out of that, I guess, right now. So, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and start with just a quieting of the mind, kind of getting centered, doing a little bit of meditation. And if you would just take a deep breath and just let it out. If you choose, close your eyes. And I want you to think about this incredible energy that flows through you. Imagine it starting at the top of your head. And like a river, just a gentle stream maybe, entering in through that portal at the top of your being, and just flowing through and gently quieting the mind. Gently taking that tension, some of the stress that you carry, letting it be carried away with that stream of love, that stream of life. Let that divine power take charge. Ease all your worries. All your thoughts are present. All the things that keep you feeling down. And knowing that that energy is there for you at all times. Flowing through you. Relax your eyes. Your cheekbones and your jaw. Flowing down through your neck, getting into your shoulders, and relax those shoulders. Just let them be loose and free. That divine power, that divine energy, that river of love flows through your torso, down into your hips, your thighs, and your legs, until that incredible river of love flows down into your feet and back into the earth. And that continuous flow of love is always, always, always there. It's just that right now we're consciously thinking about it. And with that, take a deep breath in and let it out. And know that God is with you at all times. Namaste. Amen. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Always good to see so many great faces here. So, I gave a talk on July 9th. Good morning. How are you doing?
Doing well.
July 9th, I did a talk on spiritual progress and social change, and just let me give a little bit of a background of myself. When I was 17, I started a spiritual practice under a yoga organization based out of India. It's called the Marga Yoga. And this is an international group, and it practices Tantra Yoga, if anybody's familiar with that. Tantra is just it's a practice for really delving deep inside yourself and trying to connect with that energy inside. So a little bit of that is going to be on my talk today, and so I'm going to give some quotes of my teacher, and we're going to be talking about that and how that we can maybe help raise our world around us. Anyway, so I didn't know you were going to stay in your cap.
Yeah, we're having trouble with your volume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just
can you turn it up at all? Do you want me to raise my voice a little?
There you go.
We don't have a clip on this thing, so I just put it in a buttonhole, and I'll try and hold it there as good as I can. So anyway, today is a continuation of that July 9th class on spiritual progress and social change. And I do encourage comments, however, especially when we have this many people, I want to see if we can maybe keep the comments concise and as much to the subject as we can anyway. So we discussed previously, July 9th, two most important goals in life that we have are spiritual progress and then to help create social change. So how do we know that when we are making spiritual progress? Any ideas on that? How do we know when we're really where we want to be in spiritual progress? What are some of the things that we might do to kind of look at ourselves? Anytime we practice spiritual goals, we make progress. And this practice needs to be active, intentional, and with a goal, kind of like playing the piano. The more you practice, the better you become. So, how do we do this? What is it that brings us spiritual joy? What are some of the things we do? Go ahead, Freeman. Oh, does that work?
Prayer and meditation.
There we go. There are two
I think
things.
once going back to what you had originally said, that Kundalini, which is like the awakening to God and desiring to seek goodness, God. Once that's awakened, then we start seeking. So we're seeking, right, and we continue to grow and find other ways to practice. Prayer and meditation is one here we do at Unity.
And isn't that a great feeling when we kind of awaken that Kundalini? We awaken that energy. We become more alive. We become vibrant. And so those are two things. What about attending Unity or any other spiritual organization? Fellowship. Fantastic. I love it.
The feeling of being more self-aware, when you're sensing, that to answer your question about how you know, it's like this sense of going,
yeah. It's that sense of that, whoa, great, thanks, John. Okay. Anybody like to read spiritual scripture? Spiritual topics? Yes. That's one of my favorites. I love, just reading other people's thoughts on spirituality and just getting a wide range of thoughts and ideas. Reading books, and then watching, videos and listening to tapes, and it's always like last week I had to drive up to see my mother, my stepmother, who was in the hospital in Mason City, Iowa, and I listened to a book. I mean, it was all the way up there and all the way back, but it was John Shelby Sponge. Is anybody familiar with John Shelby Sponge? Yeah, and he passed away this past year, I believe it was. but just a phenomenal writer. He wrote a book on Jesus for the non-religious, and it's really taking the Bible and putting it in a historical perspective rather than a mythological perspective, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to kind of dig a little bit deeper here. How can we measure our progress in spiritual progress? How can we measure that? Elby.
I'm looking at. Hello?
Yeah.
Looking at how your intuition is guiding you.
Okay. Good.
The more closer you are to your source, the more synchronistic your life becomes.
Okay.
And being aware of that and noticing that,
Okay.
and follow, as you learn to follow that synchronicity and that guidance, then you know that you're closer.
Okay. Great. I love that. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I think for me, it's how I deal with things. For me, it's how I deal with.
Oh yeah, just put it close to your mouth.
For me, it's how I deal with things when life doesn't go the way I have them organized to go.
Okay. All right.
When you really have to let go and say, "Oh, this isn't up to me, is it?"
Got it. Got it. Okay. Good comments. Love them. Great.
It will be self-evident in your day-to-day.
Okay.
You'll know it by the fruit, right?
All right. I love that. That's coming straight out of the Bible.
John.
What are, go ahead, Kat, yeah.
I know this might seem a
Oh,
little.
I'm not picking up anything.
Nope.
It's not on. Let's.
Is that better?
Yeah, there we go. It's.
Okay. One of the tools that I like to use is journaling. And like
Is what?
journaling.
Oh, journaling. Okay, good.
It's really interesting to go back and read your thoughts from a couple years ago and see how much you've grown. That's a big source for me.
Yeah, good. All right. I like to look at it when I like to kind of feel like, okay, none of us really know what God is exactly. You know, there's nothing, you know, it's, what's the word I'm trying to think of when words can't describe something that's
Ineffable.
ineffable. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. But we can kind of maybe think of some of the attributes of God. That's what I like to kind of see. Okay, if I'm getting closer to God, am I getting closer to these attributes of God? And what might be some of those attributes? And something we mentioned some of them for sure. Everybody think of courage, maybe honesty.
I think I would say that the more consistent I am, or the more aware I am of being on the path, it's energizing.
Okay.
You notice
Good.
a huge surge of energy. You're capable of getting a lot more done than you're used to. You know, you have high
Absolutely.
weeks and low weeks, and that's kind of how you
Absolutely.
can tell where you're at.
Does anybody look at God like God is love? When we feel that deep sense of love for all things, maybe you're just walking down the street one day and it just hits you. That love is so intense. That's when I feel closest maybe to that God inside. That God is out there, inside and outside. Back when I was 30 years old, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and it changed my life. And everything became so much more intense. I would be outside and maybe just going, it's like, why is this happening to me? And everything became real. everything became so real. The way I saw the trees, they were so green, they were so beautiful. The sky was the bluest it's ever been. The wind just felt like it was flowing through me. It was like I woke up. I woke up and I felt the presence of God. And of course, you can see, everything went well with my treatment, and I got over it. But that feeling kind of dissipated over time. And I thought, oh my God, if I could just keep that feeling, that aliveness, that awakenness. How to get that back without going through stage 4 cancer. It's always been, to me, it's like, wow, how do I get back there? Okay. But I look at the attributes of God, kindness and integrity and, openness to others, laughter, and just seeing things in such a bright way. Brenda.
Get close.
I didn't used to see God as love until I come to Unity and started with Ken's teachings and with the Course of Miracles, and then I seen God as love. But before, in the Free Will Baptist that I started out as, I didn't see it as love.
Yeah.
When I was going to them type of churches.
Isn't it kind of sad that, because I've been to many churches too, and I grew up Baptist, and we didn't talk about love. We talked about the things that would happen if you don't do what they want you to do. They talked about sin a lot, they talked about the devil a lot, but we didn't talk about love so much. And so, I think that's kind of what spiritual progress is let's get away from the negative, let's concentrate on what God is. We can't define God, but we can certainly name the attributes of God. And right here we have just a few of the, we named just a few of the things. On the flip side, we can measure our negative traits and tendencies, things that I like to call outside the love of God. How much worry do we have? How much doubt? Fear? Do you carry around anxiety? We all do to some degree, right? But on what level is it? Does it control us? Or is it just something that kind of comes and you recognize it and you go, okay, I know I have that right now. This is going on inside, and how do I let this go? How do I know that this isn't love? How do I know it? So we can measure how close we're spiritually progressing by recognizing how close we are with those attributes of God, and how much easier maybe things are on the flip side that are outside the love of God. In other words, when I was younger, it wouldn't take much to anger me just like that, or to go into resentment. I feel like revenge maybe, or whatever it is. And again, we all have those feelings where we can bring up anger, can't we? But how quickly can we release those things now? Is it just in a passing moment? Is it like a few seconds? Maybe even just a few minutes, and just let it go. Just let it go. It gets easier and easier and easier the more that we progress spiritually. And again, this is just like playing the piano. The more you practice, the better you become, and then the easier it is to let go of the things outside the love of God and to grasp the attributes of God. Okay, so it's my hypothesis that social change comes about when we've grown spiritually. Have you ever seen someone who wants to jump into maybe a social program but doesn't have the spiritual peace, the spiritual tools, and you find that they're maybe getting angry, they're always running around, it seems like, and it's hard to get things done because
than wheels.
They're not centered. It's like a wheel, isn't it? Yeah. And so, again, it's my hypothesis that in order to be effective in social change, that we have a spiritual basis first. Okay, so they go hand in hand. In order for us to be able to be, loving, and then be able to take a cause that we're really wanting to progress, we're able to do it in a way that is able to connect with almost anybody, right? And so that's why it's important, I think, to have that spiritual progress first before we try and jump into things. Otherwise, we're going to just turn people off, I think. Okay, so a few years back, now this was during the COVID years, we announced in church that we wanted to have Unity of Springfield jump out and really be more community oriented. Okay, so we announced a meeting, and in that meeting we were going to determine, okay, let's find out what it is that we want to do to have community involvement with Unity of Springfield. 4 people showed up. Okay, and Sue and I were 2 of those people. Now you got to remember, these were the COVID years. Okay, people were not coming out of their houses too much, and so I definitely understood that. But we all sat down and we brainstormed. And it was like, what are the things that we can do? And Sue said, okay, listen, we're going to list all of these things that we could do to make an impact in Springfield, Missouri, or maybe even outside of our own local area. And of course, equality, the LGBTQ plus issues, we kind of felt like, okay, we're already pretty much an inclusive church. So we're already doing that work. So let's find 2 things that we can do outside of our comfort level. And we came up with 2 things, and one of them was the environment, which, we already were doing what's called Planet Unity, which is an Earth Day event. So we thought, okay, we're going to dig into that a lot deeper, and we're going to get more involved in that. And then the other thing that we were going to do is we're going to work with the shelterless population. And now this has been just a few years ago, and you can see that we have jumped into those things as a church, and we've grown tremendously spiritually through those 2 social events, right? Okay, so that kind of ties into the subject that I'm talking about, spiritual progress, social change. We felt like, okay, we have the tools. We can now make an impact in our community. And oh my gosh, we have grown so much as a church after coming together with just 4 people and saying, this is what we're doing. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited that we are doing what we're doing and the impact it's having. And it's not only helped so many people, but we ourselves have been helped so tremendously. So jumping onto that social change can also advance our own spiritual being and our own spiritual well-being. So without saying it out loud, I want you to just kind of think for a minute, where are you along this continuum? Do you feel like you still need to just concentrate on just the spiritual awareness that you have? Or are you ready to kind of jump into something and grasp onto that social issue? Again, I don't want you to say anything out loud because it's we all have where we're at and where we want to be. So to each his own. So if we had the feeling that if we could get involved with anything, what might it be? What might it be that you would jump into? Let's brainstorm some things that we could potentially uplift our social order. What are some of the things that need to maybe go on in the world, maybe that we could help a little bit? As I said, two of the things that we were doing were, helping the shelterless and working with the environment. Anything else need to happen? Are we just all good? Go ahead.
I think that one of the precursors and one of the reasons why it's important to be vigilant in each of our own personal spiritual awakening process is that one of the things that I think that we want to raise the spiritual vibrational energy of the community around us, because that's, I think, what helps people to want to get involved and to want to, and for them to recognize that in themselves, which one of the best ways to do it is to walk, to talk,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I just don't want that to be short shrifted. I really do believe that if you're not feeling it, it doesn't come across in the same way and doesn't have the same impact.
I agree.
And secondly, I would say peacemakers.
Okay.
That's my own personal, whether it's around race, inequity, whatever it is.
Has somebody ever felt like, gee, world hunger is really an issue? That's a pretty big issue, isn't it? How many kids die every day from not having enough food? And yet, how many of us feel powerless? Because we can't go outside on the streets and start, feeding people, it just isn't there, We can do some things within our community. We can, join a food bank, we can help deliver meals and things like that. But I'm talking about real world hunger where kids die, from lack of food. Does somebody, how do we work on that? If that is something that's really strongly ingrained in us, that I need to do something. I know for me, I can take a few things that I really have a passion for and can work on. But something like world hunger, what can I do? I can donate money to organizations. Go ahead, Rachel. I'm sorry, Brenda was first. Let's go to Brenda here first.
Change the mindset change our mindset to, instead of just think about it, put the feet to the ground and do something about it.
Right, I love that because that's the continuum, that's the momentum, isn't it? That's, we start with thinking,
Yes.
but it's always that next big step, isn't it?
And another thing, to change the mindset of our political system in the United States.
Okay.
Constantly being negative, both parties being negative against each other.
Mm-hmm.
They need to start thinking about positive things that to uplift each other and quit putting parties down and actually do something for the people of the country.
I've often wondered, why do we need parties? Rachel, go ahead.
I think that we have to be, excuse the metaphor, but willing to set up a lemonade stand. We don't know how to solve world hunger, but if we start with one small piece of it, we'll get better at it. And as resources come in, as your mentality grows and changes, suddenly you're capable of bigger and bigger and bigger things, and eventually we could be solving it, but we have to be on our way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love it because that's the way we all start out, isn't it? That's the way anybody starts out. many years ago, my business that I had when I was working was, I was self-employed and I was working with textbooks. And I love books, I just love books. And I thought, this was before the internet, this was when the internet was actually just beginning. And I thought, God, wouldn't it be great if I could just sell books online, you know? Because I used to go around to conventions and I would, have books for sale. And I thought, this would be so cool if, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, gosh, this other guy named Jeffrey came on board and started selling books online. Bam, it blew up. One of the biggest companies in the world now. Go ahead, Fraser.
As far as world hunger goes, we are co-creators with God of our reality by thoughts held in mind. And by changing our thought, therefore, we will be co-creating something instead of lack.
Thank you, Freeman. I love that. I love that. Okay. So, social change isn't always about work or social action. It can be done through prayer. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, in terms of hunger, I just got thinking, so the Springfield situation is much easier to get a handle on, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about it, but I know it's a problem.
Yeah.
So, if you feed someone, it's the whole thing. If you teach them to fish rather than give them a fish, they'll, is much better. Because if you feed someone today, well, what happens tomorrow? They still need to eat.
Yeah.
And I think why is it that so many people and children are hungry?
Yeah.
And I always go back to education.
Yeah.
I just think in the Springfield area, we're doing a poor job of just making sure everybody has opportunities. I don't know how to fix it, but
Yeah, I do agree with you too, and I think education is key to almost everything.
yeah.
Go ahead, Brian has a comment.
I don't think hunger is the only thing. I think social issues are more an issue. I don't think hunger is the only, or education is the only thing. I think social issues like drugs, alcohol, systematics.
Yeah.
Me and my brother starved as children, and one of the stories I can talk about, and that is because my mother would never get off drugs.
Yeah.
That's not because of education.
I agree. We have to, we can't stop trying to educate, but you're right. Addiction is a huge issue in our culture and getting bigger all the time, of course. But thanks for those comments, Ryan. Anybody else? Go ahead, Elby.
I think part of the problem with education is the way we use education. Because we're teaching people to spit things out and to memorize, but we're not teaching them how to learn. We don't learn by having someone up in the front of the classroom giving a lecture. That just loses everybody and they're bored or they're, We learn by interaction, we learn by doing, and if we change the education system so that people actually feel like they're getting something out of it, and they're actually learning how to learn so that they can expand that education into other areas that are not taught in the school. So much of what we learn in school, we don't even use for the rest of our life. And so it's revamping the education system so that people are interacting, because then they're feeling the community, and then you've got a whole different arena to work in.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Kind of to the point about some of the social problems like substance use addiction and other types of addiction that pervade our society, is that when we're raising people's spiritual, social, emotional vibration by being in sync with themselves, then that's a piece that's often missing in why addiction rates, you know, the effectiveness of addiction treatment often falls flat because they don't have that full self growth process going where it's only, you know, again, it's often steeped by didactic education and it just isn't enough.
Thanks, John. Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Exactly right. You have to secure your own mask before helping the children next to you. And so in the education system, when you have unwhole people trying to teach people how to be whole in anything, they can't do it because they don't have it done themselves.
Go ahead, Freeman.
For my own spiritual growth, I've come to learn the principles that Unity have. Number one, there's only one presence and one God in my life and in the universe, God, the good, omnipotent. And then principle number two is that my goodness comes from God. It is my essence comes from God. It is of God. Therefore, it's not just myself, it's every individual has the goodness of God in them, innate, unchangeable, unmutable. Therefore, when I pray, I ask for the highest and best good because I know that God is expressing through every individual because that's just immutable law, spiritual law. So I trust that what I do is going to fulfill my part in the highest and best good. So when I pray for the highest and best good. I don't pray to end world hunger. I don't pray to stop wars. I pray what is the highest and best good. That's what I pray for everyone involved.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks. Yeah, go, hi, Terry. Morning. If anybody did not get a sheet, I know Terry didn't, Susan didn't, I just want to go ahead and pass these out to you. Actually, I ran out of that sheet. I want to kind of change a little bit of direction. Going back to when I first started learning yoga, one of the first things that I was taught was a sense of morality. And, coming from the Baptist background, boy, they really pushed that one a lot too. So it was kind of a turnoff to me. But in yoga and India and Hindu religion, they teach what's called jhana and niyama. And if you have your sheet here, you'll see something that says 5 jhana with yama. It's actually called jhana.
That's easy for you to say.
But I just want to go ahead and let's look at this. This is not something that's just came out of the blue. This has been, jhana and niyama have been around for 7,500 years. So this goes back thousands of years, going from taken from the earliest masters and passed down throughout the generations. So the 5 jhanas are, the first one is called ahimsa, and I'm sure some of you have heard of these, and maybe some of you haven't, but ahimsa is causing as little harm by thought, word, or action to others as possible. Okay, I think we can all probably agree on these things, but this just gives us a foundation of where we can start with our own morality, maybe, and how we can then become more effective in our spiritual progress and our social change. The second one is satya. A lot of times when you hear satya, you hear the word truth. Okay, so benevolent truthfulness of both words and thinking. Okay, I always heard, do we have to be 100% honest all the time? And I always used to think, well, yeah, of course, it's best to be that way. But is there ever a case where not being totally honest is actually the better thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can come up with some examples. One of the first things I remember when I was 17, and one of my teachers, told me, well, what if someone, was coming after someone with a gun and they knocked on your door and said, let me in, this guy's, chasing me, and so you let him in, and the robber comes to your door and says, well, did you see this person? Are you gonna be honest, or are you gonna, so sometimes it's better not to be honest, but that is still satya, okay? Benevolent truthfulness in both words and thinking.
Another example of that too is that people can accept ideas that are within approximation of where they are. So sometimes you may, in your mind, have kind of your truth of where you're at, but it's not where the other person's at.
Yeah.
So what you might want to share is something
Your judgment
closer
yeah.
to where they're at.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely.
Just when you said the ideal word, I was thinking when, you gotta check your own thinking first. If you got a judgment about somebody, you better shut your mouth.
Sometimes true. Anybody else on Satya while we're at it? The next one is called asteya, non-stealing. Giving up the desire to acquire or retain the possessions or wealth of others. So it's not just about theft, it's a mindset of being happy with what you have, being, just content. Brahmacharya, keeping the mind absorbed in the infinite, seeing the oneness in everything, brahmacharya. I like when Jesus was asked, what is the most important principle? Everybody know? When Jesus was asked, what is the most important thing, what did he say? To love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. Right? So this is kind of like brahmacharya, okay? Keeping the mind absorbed in the infinite, seeing the oneness in everything. There was another thing that Jesus also said, besides loving God. What was that one? He said it was just as important.
The second was to love others as you love yourself.
Absolutely.
Which is also another way of saying seeing the God in everything.
Yes.
In everybody.
Yeah. They kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Okay. And then aparigraha, number 5, living according to your needs, giving up non-essential luxuries. Okay, so I was reading something yesterday, and it said that the top 1% of wealth in the world actually controls 50% of all the wealth. Wow. It's amazing when we think about that. The rest of us, the rest of the 99% are fighting for that other half. So, go ahead, Terry.
I read that the Walton family has 40% of the United States wealth.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know Walmart was, but yeah.
And growing.
Yeah. So, wondering if they live according to their needs. So, and then we have the 5 niyamas, or the extraversial conduct. Okay, number 1 on that is called shauka. It's maintaining cleanliness of both body and mind. Mental cleanliness involves kindliness towards all creatures, charity, working for the welfare of others, and being dutiful. Santosha, being content with what one has and trying to stay cheerful. Number 3, tapa, doing regular service, undergoing some hardship or sacrifice to help others. Why do people get caught with that word sacrifice? Anybody have trouble with that one? Does everybody like to sacrifice?
Well, sacrifice means to lean into the sacred.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I love that. I haven't heard that one before. I love that term. Yeah. Given the sacred sacrifice. When we think about that, when we're thinking about social change, aren't we giving of ourselves to maybe help others that actually have no impact on us even sometimes, right? And so we are sacrificing our time, our energy, maybe our money. It could be it's sacrificing, okay? We feel like we have a higher purpose, maybe. higher goal than just what can I do for myself. It might be a bigger step in what can I do to make this world a little bit more like heaven.
Of course, you know, we always think of sacrifice a lot of times, it's self-sacrifice.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, you know,
True.
back in early biblical times, you know, they would kill an animal. That was their sacrifice.
I never
Like,
understood that.
Don't get me, you know, I'll take him out, you know.
That was always the, you know, sacrificing the animal at the temple. I just kept going, what? How is that sacrifice? Anyway, who am I to judge? Number 4. Jim, were you going to say something?
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, it seems like with a lot of the 1%, when they do something that's sacrifice, they do it for more public recognition. So I think real.
Maybe a tax write-off.
Right. And I think for us, it's when we do something